And welcome back to part two, an unexpected part two of this month's best of and news vlog. Watch the first part first. You'll understand. A key got accidentally pressed on the keyboard, and It just my fucking computer went insane. So now I'm picking up where I left off. So I was just talking about. I was just talking about Under the Dome and how it's been picked up for a second season. I'm not quite sure how they're going to keep this story up for that long, but I'm waiting to see more of Vaughn's influence bleed through, and that may be part of what the second season might reveal. Even though it's also been confirmed that Stephen King himself will be writing the teleplay for the very first episode of the second season. So who knows? Who knows how the second season can go? But right now, it's a solid program, solid hour of entertainment. But it just doesn't have that Brian K. Vaughan heartbeat that we all know so well. It doesn't have the great supporting characters. The supporting character of Dodie is kind of a neat one. The two the two kids, the two young people in love, the Pink Stars Are Falling twins that I call them. They are very solid supporting characters, but again, still lacking that thing that attaches me almost instantaneously to any work of Brian K. Vaughan. But again, this is an adaptation of a Stephen King work. So, and maybe it's just Vaughan trying to get his feet wet more by creating television, so that maybe he can then bring something of his own to the small screen someday. Maybe that could happen. Who knows? Why the Last Man? It's possible. I think it could. I think it could work, but only on. I think that would. I mean, that would have to be on, at the very least, something like AMC and at or FX, but I would recommend would be on something like HBO or Showtime. But again, that's obviously incredibly speculative. I don't want to speculate too much on that. So, in comic book news, what's been happening lately? There's the one thing that has been on my mind consistently for the past couple weeks since I heard this announcement, thanks to Ben Jones out there. Many of you know him as Gambit. I can't remember the numbers. I'm sorry, Ben. But he's been doing a terrific series on many Shadow-related things, particularly the original, not the original series, but the series of The Shadow Strikes, back from, which began back in the late 80s with Gerard Jones and Eduardo Barreto. That was edited by someone I'm glad to call a friend, Brian Augustin, who lives in the Phoenix area, and I see him a lot at the comic book store. And he actually showed me one of Eduardo's cover, kind of, is basically like a teaser poster that they wanted to put out for this new Shadow series, The Shadow Strikes. And it was just gorgeous, and I wanted to buy it immediately, but he was charging like $300 for it. So I'm like, I don't have that kind of money to own an original piece of art as beautiful as it is. I don't have that kind of money. But I do know that he was going to be selling it for charity purposes. I think maybe even to benefit the Hero Initiative or something to that effect. But anyway, but the big news in that realm is that that the Shadow will be brought to the present day, courtesy of two of my favorite creators over at Dynamite right now, David Liss, who's currently writing The Spider and is doing a brilliant job on that, and the second being Colton Worley, his original partner in crime on The Spider, and still wish was still there, because I love his work. I love their work together, and they're bringing it to the present day in a new series that will be called The Shadow Now. Essentially to differentiate itself from the current Shadow in the Past series. Now, I don't know how this series is going to be structured. I don't know if this is going to be the way that I've always thought of it in my head when I started. I mean, I literally have been working on ideas for a modern day Shadow for about 20 years. Literally 20 years. I've been thinking about how a current Shadow series would work, how I would do it. So if there is something like that in there, I'll be very pleased and very angry because someone will have gotten to it before me. So anyway, and also that Howard Chaykin will be returning to the Shadow as an artist, which to me is always exciting. I think I heard talk of just a separate mini-series that was going to involve just Chaykin's work. Of course, they did recently, Dynamite Comics re-released recently Blood and Judgment, Chaykin's original 4-issue miniseries that revived the character for the mid-'80s, kind of in the midst of when all of comics was turning dark again, and he did that brilliant series, which is called Blood and Judgment, which brought Lamont Cranston into the present day. But anyway, so I mean, as far as other comic book news is concerned, there again a lot of stuff out of SDCC. None of it really grabbed a hold of me instantaneously, or if it did, it's something that I've forgotten. So that will be something that I'm sure that we'll return to at some point in time. I'm sorry. I don't know if this came out of SDCC, but that Ed Brubaker and Steve Epting will be reteaming for a new creator-owned series called Velvet, which will be an espionage series, an espionage action series, and that is tremendously exciting to hear about Brubaker doing another creator-owned story that will also have the amazing art of Steve Epting. So I'll be really looking forward to that, and we'll have a female lead. And again, great, because I think that's obviously what comics, I think, needs more of right now, more female-led comic books. So if there's anything else, it'll either come to me as I'm talking about the books that I really love this month, or it will just come to me eventually, and maybe we'll talk about it next month. So I'll be keeping my ear to the ground as far as new stuff that's going to be coming, stuff that I'm really excited about. Is basically what I'll talk about, or just stuff that is so huge that everybody has to talk about it. So now let's talk about the actual comics that I read this month, some of which that I'm going to talk about very, very briefly, because I'm just going to be talking about some of the stuff that has come out since the last time that we've spoken. One of the big things is at DC is the new series Superman Batman, which is written by Greg Pak, and the interior artist, all the art, I should say, is done by Jay Lee, who's a brilliant artist. But I don't think he's necessarily the best person suited for this kind of storytelling. The art is beautiful. The story is very par. It's very like, okay, it's kind of interesting what that's like these two kind of worlds are kind of meeting here. That there's the Batman and Superman from the New 52 are kind of meeting these weird other selves of them, and it's just very strange. I'm not quite sure that I follow it, but it's if anything, it's certainly worth reading for the art. The art is quite beautiful. Morning Glories, the most recent issue of which came out this week, it has gotten to a point which I feel bad about a little bit, because I'm not sure what's going on anymore. With this beginning of the season 2, I have both loved it and have been kind of tearing my hair out, because it's like, okay, there's almost too much going on now. There's almost so much that is happening now that Spencer and Eisma are trying to put out there. Now, the fact that it does come with the little multiversity kind of footnotes at the end does help break down some of what you've just read, and that is a nice thing to see. But I don't feel like we really needed that with the first season, because I think that was still, while being totally insane, was still a fairly, if you can call it this, linear story. And now with just everything that's going on, it seems like that they're going in a direction that I'm not quite so sure of yet. I have faith that it will turn itself around, and that it will get better, or at least more accessible, I guess, is maybe the better term, because it's still good. I mean, it's still a good read, but it's becoming more frustrating than I think it ever was before. Especially this most recent issue, I was really like, wow, what the hell is going on? I have no idea. I like it, but I'm not having as much fun with guessing anymore, because it seems like Spencer's trying to get too clever, maybe, with the narrative of the story, with his narrative style for the story. So anyway, that's important. Of course, we saw the beginnings of Superman Unchained, which is neat. That's a fun series. Of course, Snyder and Jim Lee working together for the first time. I actually just got this the other day. I don't know really why I ordered this. Maybe I thought, because these are never really collector's items, but we have here, of course, the Superman Unchained Director's Cut. But I do love getting these because they are really interesting reads. This has, particularly has the, it's none of it's colored. All of it is just the pencils and inks. It even has kind of the original drafting pages, annotated on it. But it's been a good series. Also, another thing, speaking of Scott Snyder, that has started recently is his series with Sean Murphy, The Wake, for Vertigo. That has been very interesting, and it has been kind of like, wow, this is really cool, but it hasn't been blowing the top of my skull off like a lot of his work has. Also, speaking of Scott Snyder, is his current work on Batman in the Zero Year. So far, that, while having moments of really great stuff, hasn't quite cohered into something that I'm totally in love with yet. It's still very solid comic book reading, and of course the Capullo art is great, but it's just not pulling me in all the way yet, because it has like these segments of being really cool, and anything done by Scott Snyder is going to be very literate. The Wake, Zero Year, even Superman Unchained, all of these things, they're really potent books, but like I said, they don't have the I am totally in love with yet. and I'm hoping that we get there soon. Not that I'm losing faith in Scott Snyder. It's just I think maybe this is starting to be maybe a part of his career that he's maybe overextending himself a little bit. So, my hopes still remain high, and I'm sure that all of these books will continue to be very entertaining. I just, I'm hoping for a time when they're so good that I'm going to have to include them in talking about with my, in this segment here. So there's so much that we haven't talked about. But Grant Morrison, of course, his run on Batman Incorporated his run on Batman period is coming to an end shortly. Thank God. A lot of you may not agree with me. I think that Grant Morrison has done some really kind of lame-ass things with the character of Batman. And while I kept getting the issues and continued to be stymied by them as far as to, why am I still buying this? But then, fortunately, there was some of the other stuff that, people like Paul Dini were doing with Detective Comics, and then, of course, that's about when Scott Snyder started to step in and made it oh, God, yes. So let's start with the books that I did select for my picks of the month. We're going to go back. Again, these are not going to be the super detailed descriptions of the entire plot and everything like that. I'm just going to give you more or less kind of impressions of what this book meant to me and, kind of what it's about and why I felt the way that I felt about it. So we're going to start with I'm going to start actually with Satellite Sam, which is a new title from Image, and it's a new book written by Matt Fraction and with art by Howard Chaykin. And essentially, it begins. It is New York City, 1951, during the era of live television, and it's basically. We definitely have a sense that Howard Chaykin is kind of letting his fetishism with in regards to lingerie-clad women still run rampant, and thank God for that, because I've always loved his renderings of that, of the female form, particularly when they're in lingerie. But it's kind of like Quentin Tarantino and feet. You definitely do get that fetishistic moments out of that fetishistic feel of Howard Chaykin. If he doesn't get to draw a woman in a bustier and a garter belt and stockings, then he isn't really doing his job. Anywho, basically we have a TV show called Satellite Sam that is being shot, and we have the star of the show, the title character of Satellite Sam, this man, is actor Carlisle White, and his son Michael, who is one of the I'm not quite sure if he's a producer of the show or if he's a staff writer, what exactly his job is, but ultimately it's about the murder of Carlisle White and the information that will be, it's sex, it's murder, it's industry, how basically the FCC is looking to really grab onto the the phenomenon of television and to kind of exploit it for all it's worth, to the benefit of as many people as possible, but to really monetarily benefit just a select few. So, I mean, there's a lot going on in this book. One of the things that I loved so much about it is that it's in black and white. I think it suits the period perfectly. It always suits Chaykin's style, in my opinion. I think he does better work when he's working in black and white. And Fraction's writing of this is so incredibly precise as far as to the time period, to the to even the technical terminology that's thrown around in in the whatever you want to call it, the monitor room, the director's room, whatever, inside the actual producer's room. Again, I don't know what the hell to call it. I know that there's a term for it somewhere, but I don't know what it is. And it just, everything is clicking really well with the work that that they put into this first issue. It's, it sets up a good mystery with who killed Carlisle White. It sets up some really, potentially very humorous moments with his son Michael having to step in for him during, because that's what kicks this whole thing off, is that it's a live broadcast of this show and the lead actor is nowhere to be found. And so Michael actually has to step in for him and become the new Satellite Sam, because, it's a whole kind of, Flash Gordon-esque type show, if you will, about, spacemen going to space and the dangers and perils that are fraught with, Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, that type of kind of pulpy storytelling. So, I mean, the fact that you get this, this story within a story going on here in regards to the show of Satellite Sam, and that also we have all this behind-the-scenes stuff as far as the actual technical work that's involved with it, and then you have this murder mystery. And you have these apparent perversions that that Carlisle might have been indulging, may have indeed led to his murder. We don't know. But and then all this stuff with the FCC and AT&T, and just how, I mean, there's just really incredibly strong storytelling in this first issue. So if you didn't catch it, I do suggest that you look around for it, because it was a really, really quite strong read. Now, I do have to go back to, for those of you who might be here for the first time, I do base it on a 5 out of 5 rating system, or at least I used to. But all the books I'll be talking about in the books of these books of the month segments are all going to be rated 5 out of 5. There's going to be no lows. There's no 4.5. There's no 4s. It's all going to be 5s. Okay, so just as long as you know that, every comic book that I'll be talking to you about as far as a pick will be a 5 out of 5. Next one, let us talk about Thor, God of Thunder, number 10. Well, we have Gorr, the God Butcher, who is about to set off the God Bomb, and we have the 3 Thors, the Thors of 3 different eras, combining forces and to take down Gorr, the God Butcher, and, Jason Aaron and Asad Ribic. I need to get the first trade of this. I still am wondering why I haven't yet, because I picked up a lot of trades recently, despite the fact that I have a lot of these issues on their own, or a lot of, some of the stuff is because I bought it through Comixology, because it either wasn't, it wasn't at the shop, or I just didn't pick it up for what, whatever. But I picked, it's like I picked up the second volume of Hawkeye, that trade, the latest volume of Fatale, which is pretty much all kind of like the one shots combined together. I mostly picked that one up because I think it's the strongest of the stories that they've been telling so far in Fatale. Anyway, moving along. Just Thor: God of Thunder. I mean, just some of those moments in this issue are just. I mean, when we have the moment where the older Thor throws his Mjolnir to our current age Thor, and he's wielding two Mjolnirs, and it's just like, oh my god, this is so awesome. I mean, why hasn't Thor really ever been written like this? Why hasn't it ever been this cool and this much fun? Because that's part of what is so great about this book, is that it's incredibly witty. It's incredibly charming. It's incredibly action-packed. The stakes could not get higher. This is a bomb that's going to kill all the gods. And, I mean, it's just incredible. It's really just magnificent work from Aaron and Ribic, and I'm hoping that they stay on this title for a lot longer than what most creators are doing right now, which is they seem to have kind of this revolving door of artists. I mean, even right now, we have Daredevil, which does not have, currently it is being done by a different artist who I can't remember who it is right now, but it's not Paulo Rivera, it's not Chris Samney, for damn sure, and I can't remember who it is, so we'll just leave it at that. Yeah, I mean, having, like I said, having these revolving doors of, a writer working on a title and then these new artists kind of pop in and then pop out. I mean, that's fine and dandy if it's just for a pop in and pop back out and then, okay, here comes the regular series artist again. That's fine. But, I mean, why can't there be more books, for instance, like Batman? I mean, it's Snyder and Capullo. I mean, obviously, we just saw the Batman annual that had a different artist. We had Becky Cloonan in as a guest artist for an issue, but pretty much all the way it's been Snyder and Capullo, and that's been one of the things that's made that series so great. So my note to comic creators: when you have a good thing, don't fuck it up. Please keep it going as long as you possibly can. So, ironically, most of the issues that I'll be talking about this month are number ones. So, there's a lot of that going around. So just, again, I mean, Thor: God of Thunder, again, I need to get the first trade with the first 6 issues so that I can kind of pick up where, from before where I started, which is with issue 7. Because that book has been pretty much one of my, I mean, for any week that, whatever week it comes out, it had always been one of my favorites of the week. It had always been one of my favorite, if not the favorite of the week. Because that is just, it's a kick-ass series, man. I mean, it is just absolutely terrific. And, Jason Aaron, Asad Ribic, they are doing just a brilliant job with it. Okay, moving along. Hunger, number 1. Again, like I said, lots of number 1s here. But Hunger number 1, written by Joshua Hale Fialkov. Big place in my heart for that guy. And with art by Leonard Kirk, who I also have a big place in my heart for because he was the main artist for a good portion, probably the better portion of the run. The more often than not. During the run of Captain Britain and MI-13, which is one of my favorite comics, like, ever. I still can't believe that it was canceled relatively quickly. I mean, Paul Cornell and Kirk did such an amazing job on that series, and even when the other artists came in to take over, I didn't necessarily feel cheated, but I did prefer Leonard Kirk's work. Anyway, back to what this is about. Now, Hunger, basically, we are following Rick Jones, the Ultimate Universe Rick Jones, who has been bonded with, basically with a Watcher. Because in the Ultimate Universe, we have those kind of monolithic eyes, as opposed to like the big-headed Uatu. And he is kind of, blasting around the galaxy doing his, he knows that he's superpowered and that he has the chance to do something, but for right now, all he can do is watch. Basically, what he's watching is a war between the Chitauri and the Kree. And because of the events of Age of Ultron, and a lot of the, I shouldn't say just because of that, but because of a lot of different time-space continuum rips, we have basically the premise of this series is that this could very well be the beginning of the end of the Ultimate Universe, because as we see in one 2-page spread of this issue, which is brilliantly conceived, we see that the fabric of Earth 616 is bleeding into the Ultimate Universe. As we have the Galactus, which is obviously in the Ultimate Universe, it is this giant swarm of things that devour planets, and not a huge purple guy. But as we get closer to the end, as we get to the very end, who steps forth out of this rip of space and time but Galactus himself, the big purple guy. And so we know things are going to get pretty fucked up in the Ultimate Universe if the 616 Galactus, because the Swarm is cool and everything like that, but nothing beats the big purple guy. Nothing. I'm sorry. I mean, just that visage of, the helmet and, just his stature and everything like that beats the shit out of a bunch of little, drones, if you will, that fly and consume and assimilate and merge. And this creates, kind of this, and they combine together to create, both the Galactus of the Ultimate Universe and our 616 Galactus combine at the very end. It's, oh my god, it's so awesome. I mean, say what you will about Fialkov. Actually, don't say what you will. You better say he's a fucking genius, because, I'm really enjoying the stuff that he's doing right now on the Ultimates. It is a little bit lesser. It's made not quite a 5, primarily because of Carmine Di Giamenco's art. Obviously, those of us who were fans of Punisher Warzone, the 5-issue series that Greg Rucka did with this artist, where he's fighting the Avengers, was wonderfully written, but had this art that hurt it. Now, the art here is better because there's a different inker, but only slightly. The art is still not that great on the Ultimates. So, but anyway, we know. I mean, it's become really incredible having Fialkov come into the Marvel world, because everything that he's done so far has been incredibly entertaining and really smart work. Because that's just who he is right now. I mean, to me, I will follow this guy. If this guy said, follow me off this cliff, I'd be like, nah. I would try and stop him from going off the cliff, is actually the first thing that I would do. But if he actually jumped, I'd probably say, okay. Whatever, But, yeah, because Josh Fialkov, he's obviously, as has become one of my very, very favorite writers, one of my very, very favorite creators in comic books in the last couple of years. And this is just more evidence of why he's so great at what he does. So again, just absolutely, if you haven't picked it up, you should maybe check it out. Next, let's talk about The Rocketeer and the Spirit, subtitle Pulp Friction, by Mark Waid and artist Paul Smith. Here we have the first crossover ever between Cliff Secord and Denny Colt. You know, of course, with Cliff, we have our normal, our regular set of characters. Sadly, we don't have some of the characters that have appeared in Cargo of Doom that Waid wrote. There's no Sally. There's Peavy's niece is not there, but we do have. Of course, we have Cliff, we have Peavy, and we have Betty. And that's pretty much all we really need for a great Rocketeer comic. But to make it, just that much cooler, here we have Denny Colt, Commissioner Dolan, and his daughter Ellen all coming to Los Angeles from Central City to solve a murder that seemed to be almost a time-traveling type murder, because it's this is back in the late I don't remember if this was the late 30s or the early 40s, where we have someone that has come, someone who lives and Commissioner Dolan had just seen in Central City. His body is found by all people by Betty in Los Angeles, which is at that time from wherever Central City is supposed to be located to Los Angeles is like a 12-hour flight. So, how could this possibly be? And it's, because the body was discovered pretty much the same, almost the same time that Commissioner Dolan had just seen him. So how could this possibly be? And we do have, of course, kind of a meet cute, fight cute moment between almost all of the characters, of course, specifically between the Rocketeer and the Spirit. And this is just, again, huge fun. I love Smith's art style. It's really kind of almost Byrne-esque. And it's really dynamic. Mark Waid, he obviously has a great affection for this period, which he proved all throughout Cargo of Doom, and is continuing to also flex his muscles on with Mark Waid's Green Hornet series, and I couldn't stop smiling during the whole issue. It was just this huge big bag of fun. It has every kind of great pulp moment combined with a lot of modern types of storytelling. And of course, it has some tropes, but the reason that they're tropes by and large is because they work. And so it's a really, really, really fun read. Mark Waid, despite the fact that this is the only book of his that made this month's best of list, obviously is still doing some incredibly solid work over on Daredevil and on his Green Hornet series. So again, if you can get it, pick it up. It's really, really quite good. Excuse me. Now we're getting to kind of my very favorite books of the month. The ones that are still kind of head and shoulders above the others. And we're going to start with Red Sonja #1. Now here, of course, is Gail Simone's long-awaited her take on the she-devil with a sword, and having a very kind of pro not feminist, but pro-feminine, pro-woman character. Being introduced. One of the things about this that I loved so much is because I read this book. I have never read, never. People say never, I'm saying never. I've never read an issue of Red Sonja in my life. I know her by reputation. I know that she is the she-devil with a sword. I know that she sometimes has flings with Conan. And kind of the geography of that locale is put very specifically. But you can go into this series not knowing anything about Red Sonja and kind of instantly falling in love with it. For me, anyway. Walter Giovanni does the art here, despite the fact that all of the cover artists are all women. We have from Jenny Frison to, of course, Fiona Staples. I think Amanda Connor did one as well. But there's also going to be this Red Sonja, another, I don't know if it's going to be maybe a one-shot or something like that will actually be, I think, all, that Gail Simone is going to write, and I think it's going to be all female artists as well. I remember something about that. But this first issue of Simone's work on Red Sonja, it brings her trademark humor. It brings basically everything that Gail's kind of been lacking from a lot of her work over at DC right now, that I've missed desperately since Secret Six, is kind of back in style here with her take on Red Sonja. The action, the intrigue, the emotional content of the story, and the humor. Again, I know I said it already, but there's just some really truly funny moments in this book, and we have some shocking moments as well. This is a ride that you want to get on, because this is the closest that I've seen Gail get to something in her wheelhouse since the end of Secret Six. I really like her work on Batgirl. It's strong, it's consistent for the most part. The movement, kind of not there yet, totally. It's good, I'm reading it, but it could be much better. But this is the Gail Simone that I've been waiting for literally since the end of Secret Six. So, just that alone is worth the price of admission. So, again, if you're not on this train, get on it, because this is going to be some really killer stuff. No pun intended. So, and it's really hard. It was really kind of hard for me to pick like my absolute favorite book of the month. But let's just talk about the rest of them. There are 3 more to go over, and one of them is The Superior Foes of Spider-Man by Nick Spencer and art by Steve Lieber. Always nice to see his work. But Spencer, kind of left, I think, under a bit of a cloud at Marvel when he was doing Ultimate X-Men, and that just didn't turn out the way that any of us wanted it to. Especially because we knew, okay, well, this guy is a fucking genius, because he's doing Morning Glories. That's a great book. But I think if there was any editorial meeting in the creation of this book, is that how can we get more books that are like Hawkeye? That was, but this is not a ripoff in any way, shape, or form of that kind of narrative style. But this is just a very unique take on these villains, because basically we have, all of these kind of Z-grade villains that were at one time the Sinister Six, the first Sinister Six incarnation that Superior Spider-Man had fought. We have Boomerang, Shocker, Speed Demon, Overdrive, and the female Beetle. And they're all just kind of... What's so genius about this book is that it's the experiences of kind of a workaday kind of would-be supervillain. Their attempts at crimes are hilariously funny. The art is really wonderful. The framing, the sequencing of the narrative style is just, it's so wonderful, and it does feel, like I said, it feels Hawkeye-esque, but it doesn't feel like, okay, well, how can we just take the aesthetic of Hawkeye and apply it to a different book? It feels, it is fresh enough and different enough to not feel like, okay, well, this is a ripoff of Hawkeye. They're just kind of doing the same thing, but with different characters. But just really giving these, villains, if you will, kind of a new life in a more in-depth way, and more importantly, in an extraordinarily entertaining way. This book, again, so much fun from beginning to end, and I cannot wait for the next issue. Cannot wait. I just loved the hell out of this book, and I'm hoping that a lot of you did too. Next to last on the list, I would have to say, is Lazarus #2. Now, this, of course, I didn't talk about this a whole lot before, because I wanted to get into... I didn't want to talk about this new series from Greg Rucka and Michael Lark. Again, two more of my favorite creators. And I just love this series. I do think, though, that this second issue was even better than the first. Is that we have, obviously this future. It's not quite dystopian, but it's basically, we have, basically, it's no longer, governments or corporations. The entire, our entire world is run by families, and we've reduced everything to basically a feudal system. There are even, they call them serfs, the people that work for them. And we have these two families, the Carlyles and the Morays, who are at war with one another. And of course, we have the character of Forever Carlyle, who is their quote-unquote Lazarus. She is their unkillable kind of ultimate warrior, if you will, but she is very much human, but exists kind of solely to do the bidding of her father. But there obviously, as we saw in the first issue and we see again in this issue, there are she definitely has not her own agenda, but there is more to her than just being this almost kind of robotic, mechanical servant of her father. She's not in active defiance yet, but I'm sure that will be coming soon. The supporting characters, her siblings, if you will, of, Beth, Jonah, Johanna, Stephen, there's all this infighting within the family itself of who is suited best to do what. There's a lot, this isn't, this is a book of, of great intrigue, It's not a book of high action, but there definitely is action. Um, if anything, this feels like just a really it feels like a family story, a story about families, and just kind of leaving this where it was left with, Forever basically going to the Moray uh, uh, side of things, their land, their sector, whatever you want to call it, just kind of leaving us on that note. I mean, first of all, Michael Lark's art just never ceases to impress. And of course, it's great to have, two of the people that helped to make Gotham Central such a great book on this book. It is just, it the book just, it gets right under your skin, and you are filled with all of these, these feelings, and you can't help but marvel at the art. The art is just gorgeous, and the writing by Rucka is so fresh. It's so snappy. It just works on every level that any good piece of fiction should. So it's a really marvelous series so far, and again, just one of these, like, please come faster, more. I need more. I need more of Rucka and Lark together, and especially on a story like this, which is so unique, really, to the comic book world as it is right now. And again, Rucka creating another really strong female protagonist to lead a series with. Because that's kind of been, in the last couple of years anyway. And really, I think over the course of his career, has been one of his trademarks, is that of creating a really strong female protagonist, even if she's not the main character, obviously, as we saw in his run on The Punisher, but is an extremely strong supporting character, and strong enough in her own right to maybe warrant her own book, which maybe might come one day. I certainly hope that Rachel Coel-Ellis comes back to the Marvel Universe, and if anybody could write her, then please, 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 God, let it be Greg Rucka. But when it comes to my favorite book of the month, the best book that came out this month, to me, and this kind of surprised me, but it really shouldn't have, and that is Hawkeye Annual #1. The story, now, if this had been June, my favorite book of the month would have been Hawkeye #11, which is, of course, the now, almost instant classic Pizza Dog in Pizza Is My Business. That was just such an amazing book. #12, unfortunately, left me wanting a little bit, despite the fact that it's Francesco Francavilla doing the art. But I wasn't so on board with the story of Barney. I just didn't really get into it as much as I felt that I should have. Because while Francavilla is absolutely one of my favorite artists, I do think that that David Aja is really, he's the man. He's the guy that should be doing this book. And of course, all the more surprising that this book is not illustrated by David Aja, but in fact by Javier Pulido, who of course did, and this is essentially a direct throwback to the arc that he did, which was the tape segment of the first, I think, issues, I want to say 4 and 5 of Hawkeye, in which it is basically centers around Kate, and this again very much is her story. This is her story about her leaving Clint and New York behind and going to be as the title says, the West Coast Avenger. And of course, the whole, involving Madame Mask in this once again, and kind of bringing, one of the, one of the really fun things about this, I mean, not fun for the character, but one of the coolest things about creating this book and this particular issue is kind of the now bringing down to earth, kind of, you know, taking the silver spoon, if you will, out of the mouth of Kate Bishop, and, you know, making her kind of like, you know, I mean, that was part of what I think was so cool about the separation between Clint and Kate, is that Clint is definitely a kid of the, you know, of kind of dirt and concrete, and, you know, and Kate is definitely a child of great privilege and great wealth, and to strip her of that turns the dynamic of this particular issue and of her character into even more of a fascinating area, because, you know, how does one now make do with essentially nothing, and also has to get away from Madame Mask and her bellhop cronies. Just, again, huge smile on my face the whole time. I mean, I love the way that Fraction writes Kate's dialogue. I wish, I mean, and I would almost say I wish that she would have her own series, but she kind of does, because I think this series does kind of split its time pretty evenly between, well, okay, not totally evenly, but evenly enough between Clint and Kate's stories, because they're both Hawkeye. And, you know, so this book, just, again, you know, incredibly charming, incredibly well done. You know, Pulido's art is as fantastic as it was. Like, I was really nervous, and I remember when, you know, that he was going to be taking over for Aja for a couple of issues. I was really nervous when I heard that, but then reading the issues, I'm like, okay, this guy is definitely not a mistake. This guy is definitely a lot on the same page as Aja. It doesn't have the same kind of unique panel construction that Aja gives to a book, but it has its own feel, but it doesn't feel so far separated from the aesthetic of Aja that we feel like we're reading a completely separate book. And just Kate. I love Kate Bishop. I love that character, and I want so much more of her. I'm glad that she is such a strong character in Young Avengers, even though, you know, she's not as present as she might otherwise be if she wasn't so present in this book, because, you know, Young Avengers is really kind of more about, you know, seems to be kind of more about you know, Wiccan and Hulkling and you know, and Loki and, you know, Miss America than it is about, you know, about Kate, or even really about Novar. But just stellar stuff. Absolutely brilliant book. And most of you read it already, so you know where I'm coming from. So, because if you're not, you're missing what is arguably the best book. Well, it's the best book that Marvel's putting out, that's for sure. And next month in August, we are going to have, my understanding is that we will have the return of Saga. So, you know, it'll be kind of that good old fight to the finish between, you know, books like Daredevil and Hawkeye and Saga, and hopefully, you know, Snyder's going to step his game back up so we get some more brilliant issues of Batman, and so on and so forth. So that is it for this month from me in regards to comic books. So for the month of July, these are the best. So, for everybody who's hopefully coming back, thank you for coming back. Hopefully, maybe a new subscriber or two will pop up. That'll be nice. Again, in the interest of creating a more a more give and take kind of you know, between you and I. This is what I wanted to get to when I first started talking about this about an hour and a half ago, was that I want you, my friends, my fans, my YouTube brethren and sisterin, to name this segment. So you have until next month. You can, of course, put it in the comments below, which is recommended. You can tweet it to me. I am at Donnelly92274 on Twitter, and I'm always on Twitter. So even if I'm not writing something, I'm usually retweeting something, or at least, at the very least, I'm reading it, and then I'm watching some of the stuff that you guys send me. And so that's it. So again, thank you so much. Thanks for waiting it out for this long period of time. And we will be back next month with whatever this segment will be called. So thank you so much. Again, I'm James Donnelly. If this is your first time here, please subscribe. Please, 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 please comment. That's what, one of the things that, forced me to kind of keep away for a while. If you like this new format, it is not intended to be in 2 parts. As we said, that was a mistake, but I don't want to splice it together and upload it because my video editing software is shit. It will create either a really shitty looking video, or it will create an ultra huge file that I can't even upload to this because it'll be too big. So thanks again for watching and or listening, if I'm still even on iTunes at this point in time. But for right now, this is James Donnelly saying good night from the Shadow Gallery, and as always, we're going to stick with this. Remember to stay in the shadows. So long, everybody.